So today is the 24th of July, well the 25th technically, as it's 3 a.m. in the bloody morning, hence why I'm whispering, and I'm wide awake. We were planning to launch the company on Monday. You'll notice the use of the word were there. Yeah, it's been delayed. After a few weeks of amazing momentum, the first roadblock has presented itself. The company name that I spoke so much about in the last episode, the one that I was so happy with, yeah, that's gone. Potential trademark infringement, and I have been advised, rightfully so, to change it. So having built myself up and worked so hard to launch this company on Monday, this is a real blow. It took so long to settle on Podium, and everyone commented on how good it was as a name, so I'm devastated to go back to square one on this now. So you may remember that on the last episode I had just handed in my resignation at Spotify, and I said that my main priority was to get one person to commit, just to get some momentum going. Well, things accelerated pretty fast from then on. 3 weeks on from that day, and I've left Spotify already. My last day was over a week ago now, which is sad, but you know, it's also good to be able to really get going on my now unnamed again business. And getting the first person to commit happened very quickly, much faster than anticipated actually, and with some pretty big names too. And they wanted to get going ASAP, so for the last couple of weeks I have been all hands on deck to get that all produced and set up, ready to go live. As it stands now, the first episode of that podcast is ready to go, but this bloody name change is going to push that back a bit. That podcast is called Couples Quarantine, and it's by James Haskell and Chloe Madeley. I'm sure our British listeners will be very familiar with both of them, but for anyone who isn't, James is an England rugby star who was just joining the MMA world, and he was also on a UK reality TV show called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Or rather, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. My kids love that show. So he was on that recently, so he's quite well known outside of the sports world now too. And his wife Chloe is a well-known health and fitness professional with books, podcasts and many TV appearances. They've both got their own individual podcasts that are both super popular in their own right, but now they're creating one as a couple, which is great. They're going to be acting as the modern-day agony aunts for couples in a relationship out there. So they'll be chatting about their own relationship and taking in questions, comments and stories from the public and answering them in their own unique style. I can imagine it now, really. I can see James will probably take the piss out of people. Chloe will be very sympathetic. But either way, I've got a good feeling about this and think, given their personalities, this could be really funny and very entertaining. The big appeal on this for me is not just that they're well-known names. I mean, that helps a lot, of course. But I really like the format. One of the most popular podcasts in the UK and was consistently in the top of the Spotify charts is called Shagged, Married Annoyed. It features comedian Chris Ramsey and his wife Rosie, and it's basically just the two of them chatting about everyday life with some strong social media interaction. The reason it works so well is that they're both very likeable characters and both very funny. It's an easy listen, and that's my hope here with Chloe and James. They're both also very funny and likeable people, so hopefully the listeners will appreciate that. The other appeal is that the format in general is quite different to the standard format of podcasts. I may have mentioned this before in the podcast, but it's not just the standard 1 hour long interview with a host asking the guest about their life story kind of thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that as a format. It is the most popular podcast format, but I just don't think the world needs too many more of those these days. I mean, some people have pointed out to me as well that this isn't actually a sports podcast at all. They're going to be talking about relationships, dating, sex. Oh, naughty. Although also, I'm sure sports, fitness, nutrition, health and things like that will undoubtedly come into it given who they are. And this is the reason why my company's strapline has changed a bit recently as well. It's less about creating a sports podcast network, but more about creating a platform that allows sports people to create their podcasts. So if any sports person wants to create a podcast, irrespective of the topic, but they're just not quite sure how to start or don't have the time or the tech know-how to actually get it done, we will do it all for them. The full managed service from helping them craft the idea to recording, production, distribution, promotion and monetization. The full package. All they will need to do is just talk. I want to go back to something I said earlier about formats. I've actually seen a few current sports people beginning to create podcasts themselves recently, which again is a very encouraging sign for my business idea and another reason as to why I really need to move fast here. But, and I don't mean to sound harsh here, and I'm not going to name any names, I have found a couple of the ones I've listened to be quite dull and boring. It's just the classic format. Different guest each week, an hour or so interview, they chat about their life story. I mean, don't get me wrong, the people being interviewed are all interesting people with very interesting stories to tell, but there are just millions of these podcasts out there, and my personal view is that this format is just a bit stale and dated these days. I really want to freshen this up, create some new, different formats that are a bit more dynamic, shorter, sharper, with a bit more life and zest to them. The challenge is that these are harder to record. The simplest and most scalable format is the one-to-one interview, and that's why they've been so popular and successful, I guess. So I'm not saying that I'm never going to create one of these shows. At the end of the day, it's up to the players as to what kind of show they want to create. But my intention is to freshen it up a bit, and certainly some of the franchise shows that I have in mind will certainly do this, so I'm really excited to start working on some of those. So couples quarantine has taken up a lot of my time, and rightfully so. These guys have taken a bit of a punt on me, and I massively appreciate that. And this is a huge opportunity for me to get my company up and running with a massive bang, and I would be a fool not to throw the kitchen sink at that. But aside from couples quarantine, I mentioned that I've actually had 3 other projects sort of confirm. I say sort of because none of these have had any paperwork signed yet, so I won't disclose any of the names right now, but there's some pretty big fish in there, so I'm very excited. This is a much better start than I'd hoped for, considering we haven't properly launched yet, and I haven't really done a huge amount of proactive prospecting. And if all these want to start pretty soon, then I'm going to be pretty stretched resource-wise. But, I'm going to bloody do it, though. Don't you worry about that. So up until about 24 hours ago, it was plain sailing, a ridiculous amount of momentum and progress at a speed that was just beyond any of my expectations. And I have been completely in the zone. I knew there was going to be a bump in the road at some point, and this company name issue is really that first hurdle to overcome. I'm sure many people listening to this will question how big a hurdle this really is. I mean, the name isn't that important, I suppose, and I'm sure in 2 weeks' time I'll look back at this and think it's nothing. But when you're living and breathing this thing, when it's your baby, and when your heart is absolutely set on something, it really took the wind out of my sails. The thought of going back to square one really did fill me with dread, especially as it took so long to settle on Podium and so long to finalise on the logo for it, which I was delighted about, by the way. Not only did we have a really cool logo with a really cool brand design, but it had a really great sister logo element as well. That would have been perfect as a watermark on all the podcast artworks that we create. So in thinking of a new name, that was a key consideration for me. How can we maintain a similar look and feel and maintain that sister logo element? And to be honest, I have not stopped thinking about this since, which really isn't good for all the other stuff that I have to do. I still have a business to run, or I guess a business to launch. So I guess that's something that I'm really going to have to learn as a business owner. There will be more hiccups like this, more moments of adversity, and I just have to learn to deal with those, move on, not let them affect my mentality, and not let them affect everything else that I have to do. In fact, as a good/bad example of this, I had a call with a prospective client directly after my call with the lawyer when they delivered me the news about the company name. On the client call, I was just distracted. I was a bit down and generally quite unenthusiastic, which isn't me at all as a person, and most definitely isn't the best way to win new business. So this is definitely something that I'm going to have to learn to deal with as we progress through this journey. So where am I at with this goddamn bloody name then? Well, I don't want it to be a million miles away from Podium, mainly due to the logo we had done and I'm very happy with. I want something that is a snappy 5-6 letter word that is stylish, cool, a bit edgy maybe. I don't want it to be too obviously podcast or too obviously sport, but I'm okay with subtle hints to either. And I don't mind if it's an actual word either, to be honest with you. When you actually look at many of the big brands out there, many of them don't actually mean anything as a word. I've been trying to find a Welsh word that can easily be pronounced in English, which is difficult in its own right. Geez, I must have gone through the entire Welsh dictionary over the last few days. The Welsh translation of podcast is podled, so I thought maybe Poddles could be a good name, spelt the same way, or even shortened to Poddle, P-O-D-L. But unfortunately, there is an advertising agency already registered as Poddle. God damn it. But after much back and forth, we finally settled on a name. We're now 48 hours on from my sleepless night, and for the second episode in a row, and hopefully for the very last time, I'm going to do the old drum roll, please. The company is going to be called Pomodo. So, like the Pomodo dragon but with a P. So there's a few things that went into this. It's quite similar to Podium in the way it's spelt, so the change to the logo and the brand is quite minimal. It sounds quite cool, well, I think so anyway. And more importantly, the Pomodo is a bloody dragon. Come on, what's not to like about a dragon? So it's a big relief that we finally got that sorted. The train is back on the tracks. We may have delayed the launch by a week, but this is a minor hiccup. I'm already in much more of a positive frame of mind, and I'm ready to get back in that zone and completely dominate this. Bring it on. Thank you for listening and joining me on this journey as a startup founder. Please follow, like, share and subscribe to this podcast, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and stories from your own personal startup journeys too. So please follow us and comment on social media at Pomodo Podcasts. We've also got loads of great new shows launching soon. The first of those being Couples Quarantine with James Haskell and Chloe Madeley, who are positioning themselves as today's modern day agony aunts. They will be responding to people's questions, comments and stories about being in a relationship in their own unique style. So please give that a listen. I promise you it's going to be very entertaining. Thank you for listening to Pomodo and being part of this journey.